There was never a pope who was female. There was never a pope who was black-skinned. Chinese are very strong with AI and technology. And ranking of greatest universities has been falling down. China and Korea, they're going up. That's a big gap, I think, between India and China. Probably we'll wake up.
How should the gray hair professionals who doesn't have a data background start building their literacy in data science?
These right questions. Why, when, what, how.
We live in a world where every click, every swipe, every transaction creates data. And data as such is noise. The power comes in how we process it, find the pattern, and use it to take smarter decisions. This is where data science and artificial intelligence comes in. With all the hypes around, still many students and professionals struggle to kickstart their career in data science. To help us in this, we have the founder and director of Data Science Academy, Dr. Brijesh, with us. Welcome, Dr. Brijesh. Dr. Brijesh, you are a developer as well as an educator, a rare combination. How do you simplify complex AIML concepts for your learners?
Yeah, it's been about 15 years since I've been coaching people.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's primarily a researcher and a developer.
Usually, academy and industry both travels in two different directions. In your perspective, what are the most realistic uh, and impactful applications of data science which is happening today?
So the good thing is I actually, interact closely with people from the universities, colleges, and so on, and at the same time in corporate, right? And both of them have the same. Everybody talks about industry academia gap, right? But what I clearly see is the gap is because educators tend to remain educators for long, not having enough access to the latest that is happening, right? With all these exponential curve, right? That is not no more relevant. 20 years back, 30 years back, if somebody got coached in COBOL, their career is fine for the next 15 years, right? Because the technology was not rapidly changing, but that's not how it is today. So which means that educators also need to get, updated with the latest technology, which is probably a little difficult thing, right? So, but some nice things that we've seen in institutes like IIT, IISc, they take up industry projects. They get exposure to that. They talk to, people who have real problems, right? So that is one big. Probably, I think in Kerala, for example, uh, it has been suggested that the academics should actually spend some time like interns, right, at the industry. Right? So that is one nice approach, I think. And but what will not go away, right, is the foundational. So for the math doesn't change, the algebra doesn't change. Those are mandatory things that can happen only in an academic setup, I think. Right? So the foundational things definitely we get from colleges, right? And then the rest of latest technology, we get it on the job, or the academicians get on the job and then impart it. I think this is what is going to shrink that industry academia gap. All the courses nowadays, I think, the bachelors and masters and all of them have at least one semester completely dedicated to work in the industry. That's another nice approach, I think.
Could you share your journey to the field of data science and what keeps you passionate about data science still?
Yeah. Let me start with my early career, right? So after my master's, I actually have a master's in biomath, right? And then I went on to do my PhD in a area which is heavily loaded with maths, programming. Okay, and research always is full of data, right? So that's where I started, right? And I spent about 10 years in institutes like IISc. The last 5 years of my career was in industrial science. I was doing my postdoc there. Then I went on to join HP, right? From a research background, the best thing at that time, right, if you were to work with data and something that is more close to research in the corporate world, that is advanced analytics or predictive modeling or simulation modeling. So those are all part of my PhD thesis, right? And the same thing was applicable in the corporate and in a business context. So I applied to two companies, HP and Google. Google had just stepped in to India. Google didn't respond. HP responded. I got hired into a division called Decision Support and Analytics Services. Okay, and then I went on to set up advanced analytics and big data team for a company called IHS, which is into aerospace, defense, and so on. And then here I was pulled into Trivandrum uh, to set up a AI and advanced analytics team in Ansunya. Right, so that's how it has been. Right, and then when I stepped out of uh, eBuy, right, I went on to spend full time with Kerblois. Kerblois is a AI company, right? But then we didn't have enough talent here, so that's when I set up Data Science Academy.
So you told about AI writing code. That is happening because many tools are already available. When it comes to data science, how do you see AI analyzing the data and what will be the evolution happening in this space?
Let me talk about the shortcomings of the current AI. Right? Let's take ChatGPT. ChatGPT can't do certain maths very properly. It's only the newer generation of LLMs that Google and OpenAI has been working on can do decent arithmetics. But for the last 3 years, we've had so much example. It can't do maths properly because it is not meant for it. It's a large language model. It's a language model, right? But what has happened is all of what we've been doing in the past, right? Using code, right? Using Python, using R kind of programming language, right? Has yielded fantastic results. The ChatGPT of the current uh, time actually use those as tools. So ChatGPT in itself can't uh, do the analysis, right? But there's a whole lot of things that we've been doing and data scientists have been doing for long, right? And that code is actually generated and the code is executed and then the analysis is done. And then it is able to summarize the output, right? So the contribution of a data scientist definitely uh, is what kind of analysis should it do, right? Uh, what kind of tools it should do. You could specify that, right? Or the newer, more sophisticated ones will have all of that already built in, right? So that's what is happening.
This is the current scenario. Do you think AI will further evolve and overrule the need of human?
I think so, right? But you will always, so humans are very different organisms, right? And we will not be, we will not be out of job, I think, right? We'll do different types of job, right? So let me give you example. Although I said AI can't do maths, right? So there are specialized um, models built for maths. For example, alpha geometry by Google, correct? And many, many. So there's a bunch of benchmarks which will keep testing models how well they can do maths. It has reached the stage. DeepMind, Google's DeepMind, has actually um, built a model that could beat any human in the math Olympiad contest. Oh, okay. Right. So last year it was like they are they're in the second level, right? Not up to the mark to the human, for best of the human, but this year it's up past that, right? So it is going to happen. But you know what has happened? Accountants 30 years back used to do maths with pen and paper, correct? People used to travel from one place to other using half horse. We don't do that. We have faster ones. We have people move to calculator, people move to computers. The volume of things that we do has changed. An accountant who had to spend weeks together doing pen and paper, that's not the same kind of accounting that is done now. So I think we are going to use all of this as tools. We are going to go to some area where the data scientist will figure out, everybody would be like a researcher, right? But only thing is, so like I say, when I started my career, mostly it was uh, PhD people who they would hire for machine learning. That's not how it is now because the tools have big improved. The packages for it has improved. The education and the knowledge is, access to it, knowledge is increased, right? The same thing is going to happen. Things that a team of scientists could do would be done by a data scientist, okay, in some way. So we are definitely, it is going to be disruptive, but the volume of work, the depth at which we are going to do analysis is going to be very different, right? So there is a risk that people will lose job if we are not updated with the tools, right? So that's all it is, I think. But we are not, we are humans. We will try stretching. We will do more and more, right? So that's, and it's not going to stop, right? What people used to do for 10 years, we probably will do in a month, right? So that's going to be the ask also by the industry, correct? Right. So that's what I think.
Dr. Brijesh, I have seen many companies collecting a lot of data, but they are not using it properly. They struggle to use it effectively. What are the biggest roadblocks you see in translating data to some actionable insights?
So one is sometimes it's expensive, right? So there are many reasons. One is the data quality is not good enough for a team that doesn't actually know to uh, extract meaningful information. But over time, that has changed with all these large language models and all of them coming in. It has become more easier for people to actually make sense of what the data is. Right? It's so unstructured. For example, it can be somebody running a data center and there's a whole bunch of logs. Right? 10 or 15 years back, it was a little difficult to work with something like that and pinpoint certain issues. That has changed, right? So the one is the quality. One is it's unstructured, right? It was very difficult to access information till recently, right? But it's gotten better now. Other one is it's noisy. The way it is collected, maybe you're not collecting the right information, right? Because uh, yeah, hardware was costly, maintaining that was costly, security was costly, right? So certain data that you pull, for example, some real-time sensor data, you only sample some, right? So the quality of the data might have been not good enough, right? So that's not the a bigger thing is you don't have the right team to understand the value of the data, right? So, but I think every company is understanding this now, and then they are trying to put that to best use, right? And the tools are also evolving, right? You just no, it's not earlier you have to do a lot of engineering. Now you dump the data, right, and then get the AI and some automation systems to actually start unearthing that information, right? So I think in the coming years, it's going to be more useful, right? And but we are also we also know that certain kind of data is not sufficient for making progress on the AI side. We're also talking about data that is synthesized based on historic data as well, right? So that's also happening.
Keeping the technical skills aside, what mindsets and the problem solving approaches separates the great data scientist from an average engineer?
Yeah. So I think anybody who is into any kind of data related technology, right, data analyst or data engineer, or I think one big quality is to ask the right questions, right? Why, when, what, how, right? That should be like a part of their personality, and it comes by practice, right? So if you look at kids from the Western world, they are encouraged to ask questions, right? And then the way they solve the problem is very, very different, right? And probably in Asian countries, it's not like that. There's a serious hierarchy, like you have your teacher and then you don't question your teacher, right? We need to get out of that. So one big skill definitely is,
So that's a mindset change.
there should be a mindset change. So it's not like a genetically programmed characteristic. It's a learned one, right? And it should start from school, I think, right? And then we should, as managers, as leaders, as teachers, we should encourage, people questioning it, right? So that is one of the most important skills, right? What problem are you solving, right? What can you achieve by doing certain things, right? And how do you do it is based on, uh, the questions that you ask, and I think questioning um, is the most important skill that is required. I think in the future, when AI is going to do a lot of programming, and this is definitely to imagine and think, hey, if there was an application that would do this, what would change in the world, right? I think that's the kind of people we want. That's the kind of mindset we want, I think. And so but coming back to the data science question, right? I think the most important skill is to ask right questions, right? And the second skill is being persistent, right? So some people actually give up because it's so complicated, and then they give up halfway through, right? You should have the grit to complete it, right? That urge, you shouldn't be able to sleep if you don't get the answer. So it's questioning and then trying to solve it, right? By being persistent.
How should the gray hair professionals who doesn't have a data background start building their literacy in data science?
Yeah, that's a big question that keeps coming in, right? So sometimes youngsters can come and replace because they are more tech savvy. I think I myself would have gone through that couple of times. So there are times when I said, oh, you know what? Hey, deep learning has come. Now that, so this is like 10 years back, right? 2013, 2012, right? Deep learning has come, right? And everybody starts at the same level. A college fresher, right? So around 2010, deep learning started becoming promising, right? Google's and others started putting. And then a college kid and me, who spent enough time on the predictive modeling side, are equals. Okay, right? But then we realize that, oh no, that's not true, right? My foundational thing is still there, and it's and a very detailed thing that we've gone through and made mistakes and figured out and solved actually will help, right? So that was one time when I was little bit me and my peers and all of them felt okay. Maybe we are hurt. It's time for us to retire, right? And then the next thing is the ChatGPT time, right? Eh, the the people with gray hair are always seen as people having that experience and knowledge. That's what uh, their primary role in the society probably is, right? And uh, when ChatGPT came, every answer was there, right? But we started seeing AI systems like this failing if you don't ask the right question, right? So the domain knowledge suddenly became very relevant. Somebody who has a gray hair, who probably was into business requirement gathering, or he was a project manager, right? Or he was into manufacturing. That experience is so important to ask the right question, ask the AI to do certain things. So I think leaders, people with gray hairs, are still going to be very, very relevant. They will survive. They will survive. They just need to start, uh, using some of these tools, I think. So how can they get started, right? There's enough and more resource, right? AI is in your phone, right? AI is in all of your OS now, like Windows and everything has AI people. I think there's no difficulty to access that, right? Nobody has to even coach, right? You can just spend some time tinkering around with it, right? That's all I think is required.
When we talk about industry, which industry is actually benefiting most of this data?
One, as an educator, right? I think that is one industry that is going to get heavily impacted in good ways and bad ways, right? So good ways is it's very good for the students. Okay, right. So for about 7 years back, we were in a journey of building a AI tutor. Right, at a time when uh, these large language models were not good enough. Right, we had to use very complicated NLP, natural language processing, to have a chatbot that would train a student. Right, so you ask questions, or you ask it to teach you a portion, right, and it will automatically create content. It will give you small snippets of information. It will test you and all of it. Right? It was a very, very complicated application that has changed now, right, with ChatGPT. We just replace all of this code with LLM based one. Now, the advantage of that, and the reason we went on to build something like that, is every student is unique. In our class, you have young people, right, who are just in their maybe first year of BTech, and then you have people who are 30 plus years. The way they perceive or the way they interact with the educator is a very different thing, right? The senior person wants a business understanding of how the algorithms are going to be put to use, but the junior person has no understanding of business. That he's never seen that, he's never experienced that. But every line of code is so important for him, right? And he's going to ask this question. So the same classroom, people with different tastes, right? And one trainer teaching 20 people is actually not the most effective one. It's going to okay. There's a lot of time, right? And my sessions at Edison's Academy actually extend. We promise sometimes 3 months, right? And then it goes on to 6 months, right? And the reason is this, right? We try to cater everybody's requirements. So it's not good for a training student like us. And it is also not good for students when the course get extended, right? The solution to that is have one trainer per student. Okay. In a real world, that is not possible, right? One human whose attitude also should gel well with some student can be slow learner. Some students can be impatient, right? The AI can fill in that. Personalized training. It is hyper personalized training, right? So one trainer per student is going to change the world. One doctor per patient, okay, is going to change the world, right? I think these are the good sides of AI coming in, right? And that's required. I think of it, an African nation, a nurse can use this as a tool to s- tell if the patient has to be moved to a bigger hospital in a bigger city, right? Okay, that's a big thing. Right? So, before it comes to the nurse, they use their app, right? And the app said, hey, you know what? Go to your local nurse. She will take you to the next level, right? But then you will wait for a month. No, one doctor per patient, one doctor, one teacher per student, right? And all of those kind of areas, I think, is going to benefit uh, from AI. Is what I think.
So, as an educator, what are the guidances you give to your students to don't get into the negative side of AI?
Right. So, as an educator, when we are talking about AI, data science, right? We one of the things that we teach people is to be truthful and truthful with the data. Right. So it can start with source, right? And uh, a life factor can creep in consciously or unconsciously, right? Um, because there was some noise in the data, or somebody doing some transformation did something, right? So we try to keep it as truthful as possible from the source, right? And then we don't bring in, for example, political bias, religious bias, right? Or racial bias, right? And that has happened multiple times in the industry. I'll give you a good example. For example, right? Two big examples, right? Amazon and all these cloud service providers were providing services for the police department, okay? And um, so the AI application would actually do a face recognition and pull all the crime records or anything like that, right, in the system, right? But what happened is when they trained this model, it was trained with the data that had a lot of white people's pictures. So white male, right? So every time a traffic police stopped the car and did a scan, if it was a male or a woman, it couldn't recognize. And it said, there's with only 51% confidence, this person might be a criminal or so. So which means that they have to go to the police station, wait there for hours together. And that is not that's against equality, right? Because you're white, you just get away. Because you're not white or you're female, you will have to uh, go through not nice time in the police station, right? So that's because of inadvertent biases, right? The model had actually learned this, right? So they now the cloud service providers don't provide face recognition for police department. So that is one. And when generative AI came, Google had the same problem, right? So we all know what happened when they asked create a picture of a pope, and then there was a pope who was dark skinned. There was a pope who was female, right? And that raised a huge outcry because there was never a pope who was female. There was never a pope who was black skinned, right? And the reason was good intention of Google, right? They wanted to make sure that from that past experience where we talk about the Amazon kind of scenario, they didn't want to replicate that, right? And then they went on to add synthetically more black people's pictures, right? So the same thing was replicated many times probably, right? And then it started biasing towards that. So I think these are the things that people have to take care, right? So people have to definitely look at the racial dimension. People have to look at the religious, and they should look at the truth factor, right? And things like that, right? But while doing that, they also need to be cautious about they don't fall in a trap like the face recognition example or the image generation example. And mostly it is in unconscious, right? But they need to think that well ahead what would be the implication when you do use some technique, right? I think those are the things I would. Okay.
The recent approach of America towards India and China are different, that you know. Is there any connection between data science and artificial intelligence to this? Because China has already proved their capability in artificial intelligence. India has not come to that level yet. So, do you think there is a connection um, with this to the geopolitics happening around?
I'm not sure. I think India is more of a pawn, right? But I think the Chinese are very strong with AI and technology and so on, right? I'm not sure if US imposed a tariff on them as much as India. Uh, it might backfire, right? More is what I think. Right? I'm really not sure of the dynamics, right? But my perspective is what it is, right? Uh, uh, Chinese are very good with AI. Chinese are very good with manufacture, all sorts of manufacturing. And they supply so much to countries like US, right? And probably a big tariff would hurt US itself, right?
As an educator, how do you see the difference between the higher education sector in India as well as in China when it comes to data science and AI specifically?
So I think that's a great question, right? So for some reason, right, our ranking of some of the greatest universities has been falling down the global ranks, right? On the other hand, on some of the other Asian countries like China and Korea, the university rankings have kept going up. Right? Their academic systems have got really better, right? Probably in par with the Stanfords and the Harvards and the Oxfords of the world, right? And they've been aspiring to that. They have very tight. I think their academic systems definitely has improved. But I think there's also another dimensions to it, right? They've bought in manufacturing. They bought in all these high tech uh, things like chip and PCBs and all sorts of electronic goods and all of it, right? That uh, that industry has actually created a lot of demand for high tech education, right? This is technology, but I'm sure in the medicine and elsewhere also they are really good, right? So I think that's a big gap, I think, between India and China, right? And probably we'll wake up. I'm sure we've woken up, right? And we will make our academic systems more stringent and maybe better, right? More experience based learning and all of that will happen, I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brijesh.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.